This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.
If you keep comparing yourself to other people, you will never be happy.
I've yet to find anything the mortal body can experience that the mortal soul can't love. I have yet to find anything that somebody's been through that can't be turned into a fuel of opportunity.
I say we never arrive at anything. I'm never going to arrive and say, I am now the most incredible leader of all time. We are on this journey of learning. And as we grow, we learn.
Anybody here listening has taken psychedelics will know that there is no control. And the whole point is letting go and leaning in. And that's scary. But that's the scary is where the healing happens.
It's not just about food. We're still not seeing results because there's this shift of mindset that needs to happen.
You get knocked down, you got to get back up. And so part of that process is having a broken heart. You need to talk about feelings. But generally, most men, if they're not having a broken heart, they don't need to talk about feelings. And this is where psychology has misled us.
Hey everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hello, welcome back. Today on Things You Can't Unhear, we sit down with Mark Wales, a special ops veteran, resilience author, speaker, and you might know his face from the Australian reality TV show Survivor, where he stepped into the limelight several years ago, won the show, and met his wife, Samantha Gash. As a troop commander in charge of 30 elite soldiers, Mark's role in the army was to lead combat missions deep behind enemy lines. And at the end of his career, he had completed 10 tours of duty to Afghanistan, Iraq, East Timor, Lebanon, and the Solomon Islands. And as you can imagine, the lessons he got from these experiences have really shaped the person he has become. Mark's successful recovery from his time in the army and his growth led him to embark on a high-profile career in business and as a corporate speaker, training thousands of clients each year in Australia and the USA. Today in this episode, we discuss how he reinvents himself time after time, but still stays true to his purpose, how he navigated his mental health challenges after returning from the military, the work he does with corporate teams to shift their mindset, and so much more. Mark was so down to earth and real, and he was a true joy to connect with. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Please do your part to support Things You Can't Unhear and hit that subscribe button so that you can be first to know next time an episode drops, and to make sure we keep pumping these important conversations out into the world. Mark Wales, welcome to Things You Can't Unhear.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
You are a hard man to catch.
Yeah, I've been a bit elusive, haven't I? I had to put a manuscript to bed, so I've finally kind of done the first part of that. So now I'm back in action.
Are you feeling relieved?
Definitely. It's this one's fiction, so it's
wow.
It's totally different, and it's kind of half the work done. The other half is the editing, so it's going to be another 12 months, I think.
Can you share with us at all what it's about?
Well, it's got this idea during lockdown, but it's basically dystopian fiction set in the near future in Australia, and it's based around a collapse of a state and what would happen and what the citizens would do in that state. So
amazing.
Yeah. I haven't made it political in any way, but it was just something that popped into my head when we were going through it all.
Yeah. You are such a chameleon, aren't you? You just seem like a man of so many talents and seem to have reinvented yourself many times over. Now you're a fiction writer. I'm in awe now. It's just pretty incredible.
I've definitely tried a lot of things. I don't know if talent across the board is the right word, but I've definitely tried a lot of things for sure.
When you try new things, like we'll get to this because I want to talk about your journey, but do you reach a point? I was listening to a TED talk the other day about boredom and how amazing ideas come through being bored. And rarely we're bored anymore because we fill all our spare time with social media or scrolling on our phone or whatever it is. Do these times of transformation come to you through certain periods of your life, such as bored moments?
Yeah, definitely. The ideas I get around what I might like to do next always come up when I'm kind of daydreaming or just thinking about something that might be fun. This happened to me when I think I was in Afghanistan once. I think it was towards my last tour of duty. It was like 2010. I'd always wanted to go and live and work in the US. I was kind of excited by their approach and optimism. And that's where I got the idea for attending business school. And the more I read into it, the more I read into life at business school in the US, the more it kind of appealed to me. And I think you got to pay attention during those times when you're just having a quiet period in your daydreaming. Your mind will go to things that you find exciting or you might want to do, and you should pay attention to it, because I think the really exciting things in life might not come and kick your front door down, but they might kind of whisper in your ear every now and then. And if you're listening out for it, you might just pick up something that might sound outrageous at first glance, but when you look into it further and further, there might be a path ahead.
Yeah, I'm on that page at the moment. I actually was talking to a friend the other day and I said, I'm ready for something new, a new challenge, getting out of that comfort zone, shake things up a bit.
It's fun.
It is.
It's fun and different. And I think
fun.
When you've got that lack of volatility in your life, it can get a bit punishing. Like you got to put some things in there that are going to be a little bit scary and are going to shake you up a bit, because that's where your best work will come from.
Do you create much with Samantha, your wife, Samantha Gash?
We always are throwing ideas and bouncing ideas off each other. And Sammy's always enthusiastic about finding a new path, or she's a real self-starter. She'll go to a company and go, look, I've got this idea. I think we can, empower this group doing this event or whatever it is. And she'll find a way of doing the stuff she really loves doing, just by broaching these ideas with people. And so I've taken I've followed her lead quite a bit, because she's not afraid of it. She doesn't care if she goes out and gets rejected or it goes wrong, or it doesn't really matter to her. So I've kind of adopted that approach as well. And it is good.
Oh, it is. I'm one of those people, actually. I for a long time sat there and waited for opportunities to come to me, and would be so frustrated that the opportunities that I want weren't coming my way. And then I thought, you know what? I'll just create them myself. I'll absolutely take control here, reach out to people who inspire me, and take control of creating my own platforms, which is exactly what I've done over the last 4 years. And I love that. I love that you're learning from her as well. It's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I think there'll be people probably who are listening to this now who might be in a position in their life where they're like, I want to do something different, or I want to try something else. They might be in a job they've been in for 5 years or 10 years. And to the people, and you've done a good job at this, I think, in taking the path you've taken. But if you're thinking about something on that commute to work every day that's exciting, then just start working on the side and just take really small steps. And as it grows, you might realize in your heart it could be the thing you really want to do, and eventually you can jump.
There'd be people listening to this right now nodding, going,
yeah, it's true. I've been in that situation myself. I remember getting the train to work in Perth. I was working at a consulting firm, and I was just like, I can't do this. I've got to find another thing that I'm really inspired by. And it took a long time, but yeah, if you're in that boat, I totally empathize and listen to the things that you might want to do.
Well, I want to talk about becoming limitless today, because I feel as though there's elements to you that are completely limitless, and there's that glass ceiling has been broken through, and you're just going for it. And I think both of you as a couple are going for it, which is really exciting to watch from the outside. But I want to go back to sort of the army days and what the big lessons that you took from those days into what you're implementing into your life today. So tell us about the experience of you joining the army in the beginning and what drew you to it initially.
Yeah, The army was a really formative part of my life. I realized when I was pretty young that I wanted to join the army because I'd heard about this unit called the SAS. I'd seen a book of a hostage rescue they'd performed in London, and I just thought that looked like such a high impact, really hard to do, really exciting job. And that is what got me on the path towards the army. And so I joined when I was 17 years old. I was a baby. But I can just remember the values they instilled in us at a really early stage. And I didn't always understand why they were doing it, but later on, I came to appreciate why. So we might get things done like, you might clean your weapon and someone would come and inspect it, and they'd be really draconian. They'd have this really high attention to detail. They point out little things and you don't know why, but the point they're making is that if you can control the things that are within your remit, then all the other uncertainties that come along in life are much easier to deal with. And so the point that I kept making is like, be comfortable in chaos, like take control of the things that you can early enough. And it means that when the chaos does come in life or on whatever mission you're doing, you'll be able to handle it with a lot more focus than being worried about all the things you could have sorted out before you got into battle. And so for us, that would be, keep yourself fit, keep your equipment in good shape, make sure you're well trained, make sure you know how to run a tactical assault without having to look at an instruction manual. Like just know how to do that stuff off the top of your head, because when the tough times come, you can draw on all these skills in the moment and your chances of success will be much higher. So I think, and I made so many mistakes as a young soldier. I got things wrong all the time. And I think don't be too hard on yourself when you're starting out. I think, in a lot of cases, but just be prepared for those embarrassments and failures when they come. And it's a true path to growth, I think.
I love that. Be comfortable in chaos. I think it's a really big takeaway. Chaos and also a lot of unfathomable low moments, I suppose, during your career working with the SAS and in Afghanistan and, on duty and being deployed in the army. Is there a time where during that chaos you were really struggling mentally? And if so, were you aware of it at the time?
Oh yeah, there were times when we were operating well beyond what I thought we were capable of kind of operating on. I think at the emotional level as well. I mean, you do the selection course to get in. That's hard. That's super high stress, and you're always failing in that. So there's that constant sense of overwhelm. But the big lesson I learned there is even if you are overwhelmed, just, one foot after the other, just stay on target. Don't drop your bundle. And often that's the key to getting through a lot of these situations is just that perseverance, keeping your wits about you, not giving up. That's a really big part of it. And then later on, I was a team leader. I took a troop into combat in Afghanistan, and we faced some of the horrors of war that you hear about or you might see in popular culture. But when I was finally confronted with them, I just remember thinking, this is such a serious thing to be so close to life and death. And there was a man in my team that was killed in one of the first battles we were in. And for me, that was the sign that this is absolutely serious. This isn't a game. I was 26 or 27. We're going to be in this for a while. And if you don't do it properly, this is the consequence of getting it wrong. And so dealing with that, like carrying that with you when you're trying to be professional, it was hard. It was really hard.
I can imagine just how hard that was. When you had identified there's some struggles, you've left Afghanistan, you've come home and you've realized there's some mental health struggles. What were the steps that you sort of took to help relieve what you were going through and make yourself sort of back on track?
The first step to recovery from this, and this applied to me because I'd come back from a war zone, but you might have lost a loved one or suffered a divorce or some life-changing tragedy, and you might sense that something's not right. I think people have this response to grief or misaction, I think, all the time. It's really common, and And it's confronting when it does creep up on you, because you may not have experienced it before, you may not be trained in what it is. But for me, I knew something was wrong when I couldn't concentrate at all. I could do maybe 5 minutes worth of work and then I'd be tired. I was socially withdrawn. I didn't want to be around people. I'd kind of hide myself. I'd tuck myself away in my apartment and not come out, and I'd get nervous if I had to socialize, which is really unlike me. And so that to me was a clear sign that something was wrong. And I was totally burned out as well. Just that feeling of fatigue from emotional burnout, or overwork, or chronic stress, like repeated low-grade stress day in and day out. I don't think people realize how bad that is for you. And there's plenty of that in the corporate life too. You just did this constant low to medium level of stress, and it's not good for you. You get it during your commute even. And I think repeated exposure to that has really bad health effects. I think a bit of stress is really good, and too much is really bad. So, I mean, the first step for me was admitting that there was something either not right or something totally out of balance here. And so after that, I went to a psychiatrist, and they diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, which I wasn't surprised by. I kind of knew something was wrong. And then the guy talked through a recovery plan. He's like, you got to take yourself back to health basics, right? To start with, we'll do all our psychotherapy and all that, but the main thing is you got to look after yourself and start investing in your own health a bit. He goes, make sure you get enough sleep, get 7 to 9 hours sleep a night, and have a bedtime routine, and that's going to help you rebalance your mind. That sleep is essential to mental health and recovery. And he talked a bit about diet and exercise and the role that plays. He goes, don't just view this as a mental health problem. It's a system problem. It's a whole of body problem. And if you try and treat one part in isolation, it may not work. So deal with the whole system, look after yourself in total, and that will make the difference. And I think everyone knows that. Everyone knows that you got to be healthy and get your rest. But it's actually hard to do it consistently, especially when you're a busy professional like we are. It's often easy to neglect yourself or run too hard for too long. And I think you have to sometimes, but just have that awareness that eventually you need to rebalance and reset yourself. And that's how you get longevity. That's how you get your best ideas. That's how you get your highest level of productivity. It's sometimes counterintuitive. Sometimes having a long rest or just working at a low level is where your best work is going to come from.
I think that's such good advice that you received, because there can be such a band-aid solution to things, like you said. And let's just pop you on those, or pop this over there. And it's just, it's covering up what's actually going on.
Exactly.
So obviously talking helped you a lot as well, and releasing all of those experiences that had occurred that had caused so much unrest within your mind. Did you think that was a real sort of main factor in being able to move forward?
Yeah, I think reflection was a big part of it. I think if you have something like that happen and you just, I'll just get busy for the rest of my life so I don't have to think about it again. Well, that's a fast track to some sort of burnout or meltdown. And I think that's quite common. Or self-medication, I'll just drink or whatever it takes to calm yourself down or to forget about what happened. It's a shortcut. It's easy to do, and it's extremely damaging for your health. And I just think that if you don't have that reflection period and that healing period after these things, and give yourself that permission to do it, it can lead to real issues down the track. I think we ran into that as a special ops task force. We were getting young men, sending him into combat, putting him through these horrendous episodes, and we might give them 6 weeks, 2-3 months at home to process it and send them straight back out again. And we did that repeatedly. So you can imagine the impact that has on people.
Oh, unbelievable. How many years were you actually in the military?
I was in the military 16 years, and I counted it up. I think I spent about 4.5 or 5 years overseas in combat zones, with most of my 20s. Yeah.
And it just came a point where enough was enough, right?
Yeah, I think, and the other thing was I'd set myself a really clear mission when I joined the army. It was like, I want to get to the SAS. I want to be a troop commander, and I want to deploy into a war zone and fight with a team. And I'd done that not just once, but a number of times by the time I'd left. And I thought, do I keep going down the military path, or is this the chance to switch into something else?
So what was that extra decision that you took to take that extra step into, applying for the SAS?
Because I always wanted to, I guess, go beyond what I thought I could do, even if it was a long shot. It's like, go and try it anyway, because then if you're sitting down when you're 80 years old, you're not going to regret that you tried and didn't get it. I think you would regret a lot more if you thought it was too hard, didn't try, and looked back and said, wow, I probably could have done that. Well, why don't you just find out? Like, if it doesn't work, that's okay. And that's something I've kept that now for good. It's like, I know it's a long shot to get into this business school, but why don't I just try it? I'll try and improve my odds by doing the homework and doing the right stuff. And if I don't get it, that's okay. At least I won't die wondering. So the point with that is, if you've got a big goal and the odds of achieving aren't high, well, tilt the odds in your favor by being more prepared, by being better than your competition, by researching it relentlessly, by having a plan, being organized. Like, those things take you from being an average candidate to a very good one. And your chances can improve dramatically just with that sustained effort.
Another great tip: be more prepared than your competition. I'm going to put a list of these tips, Mark Wales tips, together, because I know you actually go out and you talk to corporates a lot these days on how, because we have so many people on this podcast who are actually ex-corporates who have been through that incredible burnout and high stress situation, that fight or flight lifestyle that you were talking about earlier. And then they've had this massive awakening, or a tool that they've implemented into their lives, and then they've seen the light and don't want to go back to that state of stress. But then I've seen other people who've done that, felt that, come out of it, learnt the tools, and then gone back into the corporate world with this whole new mindset. So I love that companies are introducing these conversations so much more these days into the workforce and into the teams that filter out into the work that everyone is doing. Taking a quick minute to interrupt this conversation to let you know about something exciting I am growing. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. And I've launched a podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, that features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of our network that truly embody that mission, and we're looking for more. If this has sparked interest in you and you are ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd love for you to check it out. Also, if you have something important to say and you don't know where to start to bring that to life, we can also help you to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light online sessions to help you get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own that is authentically you. Just head over to guideyourlightnetwork.com. So tell us, when you're invited to go and speak on stage, or when you're invited to go into workplaces, what are some big lessons that, I mean, you've already shared a couple of with us already, but some big lessons in those for those people who are in burnout stage or reaching burnout stage and living that grind life of, stressful situations, deadlines, et cetera.
So I come at it from a few different angles. There's normally, again, I try not to look at the one issue. You've got to look at the broader perspective in how we work as an organization and what it is we're trying to achieve, and then kind of start with that in mind and then go down to the individual. So I talk a lot about having a mission first mindset, like prioritizing your mission over your own personal needs and team needs sometimes. So I talk about having the mission first, your team second, and you third. And then I talk as well about planning principles, like this is how we plan things in special ops. This is the principles and the rules that we follow when we're planning a mission, because so often things go wrong, and this is how we cater for it. This is how we make our plans more resilient. And this is how we imagine scenarios that just aren't going to work or aren't going to work in our favor. And then finally, talk about self-care. Like, this is how you should look after yourself if you want to work at this really high level for extended periods of time. And to illustrate that point, I kind of talk about my own failures in that department and how I've kind of rectified it. So I think companies, and none of that is kind of rocket science or new, but sometimes companies just need to hear, like, when we're not all focused on one mission here, we're all working in silos and we're not cooperating across the board. And we just need to find a way to streamline that. And then if you're a new team leader, like, how do you keep your team on track with a single mission? How do you communicate that all the time? It's just a really good prompt for people to do that. And then while all that's going on in the background, like, take care of your own personal health, like, invest in yourself, make sure you're healthy, make sure you've got that free time, that white space every day where you can just daydream, exercise, whatever it is you need to do. Just spend some time on yourself every day and guard that time really jealously. So they're kind of the aspects of it that I talk about. And then I kind of dive deeper onto each one of those if people want me to.
Well, tell me about your self-care routine and how you do that in comparison to what you were doing during your time in the military.
Yeah, so this is one of those places where you can get a huge advantage in aggregate. So a lot of small kind of micro improvements or habits, when you add them up together, they're worth quite a lot. So if you do, for example, on a good day, if you got 8 hours rest, if you exercised for 30 to 45 minutes, if you ate pretty well across the board, and then you had some good social connections and interactivity, and you were working on things that had a high sense of purpose or meaning to you, that's a clean sweep almost. It's when you start knocking out those different pillars that you can start to experience that burnout. So, all right, you don't get 7 hours sleep, you have 5 hours sleep and you're out drinking as well. The next day you don't eat well, you miss your exercise, and you work in isolation for a couple of days. You're in a totally different frame of mind after doing that compared to if you've looked after those pillars of high performance. So the point I'm making to people is just, it's okay. You're not always going to be able to hit these points every day, but just have the awareness and be able to audit yourself frequently. If you know you've been behind for a week or two, then focus on yourself for a bit.
What about you? What do you do?
I make sure, I had this period, I think it was after the pandemic, where I really let my health slip. I was kind of in bad shape. I just wasn't in good shape at all. I kind of fallen out of my exercise habits. So I carved about 2 hours out every morning, and I'm like, this is just for me. This is so I can get to a gym, or I can go for a run. I can clean up properly. I can have a good meal, and I could start my day like that. I think beforehand I was kind of rushing that part of my day. I get for some people this isn't always possible. You might have family or a job you got to be at, but the point I'm making is I consciously carved out time in my day to look after myself. And then the second thing I did is I'd only choose one major project, and I'd really prioritize my time around that one thing. So if I was writing, for example, I'd allocate a 2.5 hour block each morning where I'd turn my phones off, everything would be turned off, and I'd just be focusing on that one job. And so you don't get that task switching that happens when you get interrupted and you try and do 5 different things at once. Just focus, just do that one thing in that deep work really well and really consistently. And over time, you'll be able to build something great.
I love that. I think that's important information, because there's so many distractions these days that come into our lives.
Yes.
And I suppose, especially if you're trying to write a book like you were, and
yep.
You've got a deadline to face and you've got to get that done. It's important. So from your incredible career that's changed many times, now, you're working as a speaker and writing and traveling and, doing all these amazing things sort of in the media and in the face of the public, which I'm sure was a transition point for you as well. What are some of your proudest moments, would you say?
I think definitely my proudest moment is becoming a father and a husband. I think it's kind of this won't be a popular viewpoint with everyone, but it felt like a bit of a rite of passage for me. I think for the first time in a long time, there were other people in my life that were much more important than just my own kind of goals and needs. And I think that when you've got somewhere to put that energy, it's rewarding. You know, you've got to be patient with a child. You've got to make sure your partner's looked after. And I think just having that in my mind was a big change for me, and it was one for the better, for sure. So that's probably the biggest thing I'm proud of. Sammy and I have done a few really fun things together. We did World's Toughest Race like about 3 or 4 years ago. That was a big, really fun event we did in Fiji. And then we went back on Survivor together, and that's always a pretty harrowing experience, but it's fun. It was something we'll talk about forever, and we did really well second time we went back. So
you won, didn't you?
Proud of that too. Yeah, we won. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Can't do better than that. So do you think if you were a husband and a father back when you were serving in the military, would things have looked and felt a lot different for you?
Oh yeah. I don't know if I could have done it, because it just changes the dynamic of what you're trying to achieve. Like if you're deploying and you've got a family, that's a hard thing to deal with. I take my hat off to the people that are able to do it, but it's such a big sacrifice. I think that time with your family, I view it as being pretty precious. And when it's gone, that's it. You can't get it back. So you don't want your kids growing up without you. I think you want to be there for them when they're growing up as much as you can be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, it wouldn't allow you to be as present as if it was just you out there and doing your thing. Yeah. So this podcast is called Things You Can't Unhear, as you know. And I always ask people, is there something that you have heard or read or during a conversation or something that, you were given in some type of way that changed you, that a sentence that completely changed you, or information that changed you in some way?
Yeah, I think a big one, this came when I was young. I was about 23. My mum got really sick just after I'd been in the military like 4 or 5 years. She got cancer, and she was terminally ill. I had to come back to Perth with my family and spend time with her when she was basically in palliative care. And I just remember thinking how kind of unfair it feels. She was young. We were young kids as well. And it was just that first time I kind of realized that things won't always pan out in life the way you expect them to. It challenged my assumptions a lot that, only old people are the ones that die or whatever. Like you have these ideas when you're young, and sometimes life doesn't unfold that way. And I just remember talking to my mum about it. She just goes, look, sometimes these things are sent to test us. And she didn't try and explain that in any way, but it was kind of her way of saying, look, sometimes things are going to come your way you're not going to like, and you're just going to have to find a way around them and accept that that's what life is, and you can find good in it.
That's made me just pause, actually, because I think that's a really huge sentiment that many of us can learn from. And, thank you for sharing that. I think, that's wonderful that you've been able to take that from your mum into your life to still today, and now be able to share that with so many other people through the work that you're doing. So yeah, I really appreciate you. I appreciate everything you've done to date. I feel as though you're on this incredible mission somehow to change the world for good through the work that you do. And it's amazing to see that, you can weave and change, and we aren't stuck in these limitations that we create for ourselves based on a career choice that we made once. And, we don't have to stick to that pathway if it's no longer serving us, and we can reinvent ourselves continually. So if you have someone here listening today, if someone out there doesn't believe in themselves and their capabilities to be brilliant or to be limitless themselves, what final words of advice would you say to someone in that situation?
I'd just say, don't accept what you're given as being fixed. I think that there's certain areas in life we wish we were either better at, or we had more at, or we could do. And my biggest piece of advice is, don't think that you can't at least have a swing at the fences for those things. I think that oftentimes in life there are gatekeepers in certain industries. There's people that throw up barriers for us so that they can enjoy what they've got, or they try and signal that this is not an achievable thing for you. And sometimes well-intentioned people giving you advice will say the same thing. Just do what you think's right. And if it's a tough objective you're setting yourself, say you want to be the top pastry chef in the world, or you want to be the best, Broadway dancer there is, or you want to be an SAS soldier, don't accept the high chance of failure. Don't worry about that. Try and make yourself better. Don't accept that the sacrifice is going to be too much. It might be great, but the reward could be worth it in the long run. So yeah, that's all I'd say is don't accept what you're given. Strive for those things that feel like you shouldn't be allowed to have, because someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do those jobs. Why can't it be you?
Yeah. Why can't it be you?
Why can't it be you?
So when you transitioned over to, speak for the first time and, you became a public speaker, did you have fear around that? Did you have these limiting beliefs on yourself that you couldn't do it and you'd never done this before and this is a whole new field? How did you even approach it?
Yeah, I was afraid of it. I was afraid of the field, and it was almost all kind of ego related. I was worried about speaking in front of an audience. I was worried about looking silly, or that I didn't have the experience necessarily to lecture to people. And then after a while, I started to realize that when you're a speaker, if it's not about you, and it's kind of like what you said about the podcast, it's about what you can potentially offer to someone, even if it's just one point they take and it could potentially change them for the better. We've now got the ability to reach a lot of people, whether it's with a podcast or whatever it is. And I think that's the point where I got a lot better at it, is when I'm like, this isn't about you. Don't worry about what you're wearing or how you look on stage. Like, make sure you pass on the best message you can and hope that someone latches onto it and is able to take it into the workplace and make things better for them. That's kind of when I started getting better at it.
Yeah. And I suppose you know more than anyone how to keep calm under pressure.
True. Sometimes it took me a long time to get used to it, but yeah, the old public speaking is still pretty scary.
More scary sometimes than any other thing that you can actually do. And they do say that more people fear public speaking than they do death. So
that's right. They'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy.
Correct. This is amazing that we allow judgment of others to affect us so much. So it's just, it's mind-blowing, really. So I really appreciate your time today and you sharing these insights with us. And we're going to be looking out for your new fiction book that will be coming out soon. And we have your non-fiction book, which others can grab a copy of as well, to hear more of your time in the military and the stories and the encounters that occurred and the experiences that shaped you as a person to who you are today. But I'm sure there's more coming from Mark Wales in the public arena too. So we will definitely look out. If any corporate companies would like to reach out, get you to come in or speak to their team or engage with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
You can find me on Instagram at mark.a.wales or just website markwales.com.au and come say hello.
Wonderful. And how are you feeling the rest of your day today? I'm going to go for a walk in the hills. We live up in the Dandenong Ranges, and then I'm going to pick Harry up because he's at kinder, which he loves. So I'm going to go collect him, and we're going to have a quiet afternoon. And then that's your day done once he's home, right?
Done. Have a rest. Yeah.
It's all about him. That's it. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Mark, for your time today. And I really appreciate all of the sentiments that you shared with us.
Mate, love what you're doing, and really appreciative that you had me here, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.